joined us. We are recording. Welcome. This is the final panel of our inaugural conference for our brand new New York Southeast Asia Network Public Universities Consortium. The aim of this NYSEAN PUC is to serve as a virtual statewide Center for Southeast Asian Studies to allow sharing of resources, building a network, and forming a sense of community broadly across those of us who work on or in Southeast Asia or from Southeast Asia, across the CUNY and SUNY systems, as well as anybody else who feels like getting involved. So there are plenty of private universities that don't have centers for Southeast Asian studies as well, including in New York State, so we're not exclusive. So over the past 3 days, we've had 3 other panels. We had one that was oriented toward both faculty and graduate students on conducting research and adapting research for digital strategies and other ways to deal with COVID. One for graduate students on such issues as applying for jobs and grants. And then finally, a panel for undergraduates yesterday on language training, finding funds and fellowships for study abroad or for going overseas after graduation for master's programs and how to apply for those in Southeast Asian studies and so forth. We've been recording the panels and we will, so long as all panelists are agreeable at the end, we will upload these to our website after the conference is over. And so for those on here who are faculty at universities in particular, the advice our panelists gave for graduate students and undergraduate students was so spot on that I would definitely recommend sending students there. That's why we're putting it up online, is so that more can access that information. All right, so moving on to some very essential thank yous. First off, thanks to the New York Southeast Asia Network for making us possible and to Blues Foundation for making NYSEAN possible. And I will ask Margaret Scott now to say a word about NYSEAN.
Hello, everyone. This has been more exciting than any of you can even imagine that this has happened, and it's been such a success. I just want to say hi and welcome, and I'm thrilled this has happened. I'm Margaret Scott. I'm an adjunct at NYU and one of the founders of it's a virtual network, NYSEAN. It started in 2015. And I urge all of you to go to nysean.org, NYSEAN.org, and become a member, and then sign up for our newsletter. And this is just a taste of all the things that are possible if the virtual collaboration becomes robust, and we hope it will. One of the other founders, Anne-Marie Murphy, is teaching right now, but before the Q&A, she is going to weigh in with a little bit of what she thinks the benefits are for faculty and students. And congratulations, Meredith, and congratulations, Jin Wen, and everybody for participating. Thank you.
Okay, great. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Meredith Weiss. I'm a professor of political science at SUNY Albany and focus on Southeast Asian politics. Okay, and then lastly, before I turn things over to our moderator for today, Jennifer Gaynor, I would like one final time for the conference to extend my sincere thanks to the group of students who have pulled this initiative and this conference together. So those students are Alyssa Gyang, Asari Eddy, Charmaine Willis, Jeffrey Nasri, Karina Indrasari, Crystal Fajardo, Nurul Widyaningram, Kwang Chao, and especially Zhang Wang, who's been the coordinator for the entire effort. So thanks to all of them for their amazing work. And with that, I turn things over to Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Gaynor. I'm currently a research fellow at the Baldy Center for Law and Social Policy at the University at Buffalo SUNY School of Law. And it's my pleasure to be the moderator for this panel. So the panel itself is basically focused on discussing the challenges and the opportunities for doing research and teaching about Southeast Asia at SUNY and CUNY institutions. So what I'm going to do is just say a little bit about the PUC. I guess you've mostly done that already, right, Meredith? But I could say a little bit more and then introduce each of the panelists. And then after I introduce the panelists, I will ask, there's 3 questions that they've basically been asked to think about. And I'll ask each one at a time, and we'll go through the panelists. And then I'll go to the second one and the third one. And then after that, we'll have time for discussion, I think. So if you have questions, you can post them in the chat, or you could ask them in person if you're feeling like doing that after the panelists have spoken. So yeah, the PUC, the Public Universities Consortium of NYSEAN aims to foster and facilitate this kind of interdisciplinary Southeast Asian studies dialogue throughout the SUNY and CUNY systems, bringing Southeast Asia specialists across the state into conversation and facilitating collaboration, information sharing, and network building. This consortium, this amazing consortium, offers benefits for both academic faculty, undergraduate and graduate students, and even professional staff as well. So the NYSEAN PUC is currently hosted by SUNY Albany and headed by a committee of faculty from across the CUNY and SUNY systems. And with that, I will just jump in and introduce who our panelists are. So we've got Vida Vanchan, who is now professor, congratulations, of the Department of Geography and Urban Planning at Buffalo State University, SUNY. We have Ik Tan, associate professor of Comparative Literature and Sinophone Studies in the Department of English, as well as, I see, chair of the Department of Asian and Asian American Studies at SUNY Stony Brook University, or Stony Brook University, SUNY. We also have Lauren Meeker, associate professor in the Department of Anthropology at SUNY New Paltz, and Angela Reyes, professor, Department of English at Hunter College, CUNY, or CUNY, and doctoral faculty in the program of anthropology at the CUNY Graduate Center. So welcome to you all. This is an amazingly distinguished lineup. I have to say, I was looking at people's websites before and I'm thoroughly impressed. So what I'd like to start with is just a basic question. What aspects of NYSEAN PUC network, the Public University Consortium network, would be the most useful? And anyone who wants to can jump in. And if no one jumps in, we're going to start with Vida.
I'll go first then. All right, so first I'd just like to thank all the organizers and specifically Karina Atasari, sorry if I pronounced that last name incorrectly, for the invite and to be part of this panel. As I'm excited to be here and to be joined by distinguished fellow panelists and excellent moderator, Dr. Jennifer Gaynor. And I do have a small disclaimer to make before getting into, all answering the questions. Pretty much my opinions, it's only my opinions, not of my institution. So I also believe that I am more of a least traditional scholar in the room here, and in a way that because of my background in academic disciplines. So I work in both public and private sectors, and my research utilize more of a mixed method approach and more empirical side, and a lot of work that I've done in Southeast Asia, particularly it's more on the applied side. And so that's why you don't see a lot in the literature and a lot of the writing, because it's more on the groundwork and more empirical work. And I do tie that into my teaching, which focuses a lot on applied learning. And so I look forward to learning a lot from my fellow panelists here today. And also think in a way of getting into answering your question about what aspects this network would be most useful for. I think this is an excellent start. This is a great start of bringing all of us together, getting to know other faculty and scholars who have a common region of interest. I know we all can share this feeling that we seems to, as academics, we work in silos, right? So, so by bringing us here together is a wonderful start. And getting to know about the research activities, what people are doing, their latest research. So you might get some information from the website, but it's not really, that obvious as we get to talk to one another to actually exchange ideas. And I wish that it could be in person, but obviously this is how we can all, come together. And I think this is where we're at now, but this is a wonderful start. And to really finding ways to collaborate. I know this has been stressed throughout the week, that for us to collaborate. I know we, have our courses, we compete for funding and doing all these different activities, but having this network and having all of us here together and say, I could point to, if I look for something and I need some experts in doing this area of work, so I can reach out to the network, to people within the network that I know and say, hey, would you like to do this together? Would you like to collaborate? And we talked about students and sharing information. And so this is wonderful. And I'm so excited to be here. So I think this is my take on getting what would be useful out of this.
Vida's being very modest, I think, because she's almost single-handedly organized Southeast Asia Week at Buff State College, and she's drawn in people in the area and from elsewhere to come and speak in Southeast Asia Week at Buff State. But at the same time, I could see how having this kind of network might help with that kind of organizational, just even to have a wider network to pull on, but also it just will be easier to pull together, I think. So kudos to you for organizing that.
Thank you. And thank you for participating last year too. It was wonderful. Giving a talk and hearing all about land reclamations in Indonesia. So got a lot out of it. Thank you so much.
So who would like to speak up next about what's most useful about the network, the PUC?
I can follow up. Thank you, NYSEAN PUC network organizers, for inviting me to join this panel, especially the graduate students who are the main driver of this inaugural conference. I also want to thank Karina for reaching out to me and so efficiently communicating and prepping me for this panel. It is an honor to join my colleagues from Buffalo State University, SUNY New Paltz, Hunter College, NYU, and many others who are here. I can see some of my friends and colleagues too. I actually wrote up something for this panel today, so I'm a little bit of a nerd, so I'll be reading some of this stuff, so forgive me on that. So the question of resources and challenges in engaging with Southeast Asian studies on our Stony Brook campus allows me to ruminate on the first question of what aspect of the NYSEAN PUC network would be most useful. I'm thinking of at least two aspects relating to the usefulness of NYSEAN PUC network. One, which is resource sharing. Vida has been talking about that. So I want to think more about how we can do this. So the network itself has already been doing the work of connecting scholars and students in Southeast Asian studies, and as a result, encourage and promote exchange of scholarship and sharing of resources. I think there's a lot more we can do to expand such exchange and sharing. So can we, for example, explore the possibility of offering online courses through SUNY Open, where students across the SUNY system can take courses on Southeast Asia from scholars outside their home institutions. And I think this is what Meredith was talking about in the beginning during our chat before the panel begins. So we can talk more about that, and I hope we would. And the second aspect is about mentorship programs. I'm thinking about how this is related to resource sharing. I wonder if the network can facilitate the kind of building of a mentorship program for faculty across SUNY and CUNY campuses or beyond to help mentor graduate students and junior faculty. So those are the two things that I think the network has already have some kind of resources that could support. Yeah.
Those are all amazing suggestions, building on what other people were saying earlier, but also kind of taking it much further. Lauren, thanks, EK. Lauren and Angela, do you have some things to add to that?
Sure, I can add to that. I echo everybody and all of the thanks to Karina and Zhang and Meredith and, and Jennifer for putting this together. I feel like I'm repeating what everyone else has said, but particularly Vida, right? Feeling sort of isolated in your own little university, apart from, you're in graduate school and you're surrounded by all these people. Well, I wasn't really on Southeast Asia, but there were more. And then you dive into your university position and you go off and do research and you're surrounded by, Southeast Asian studies, and then you go back home and there you are all alone again. So I really do appreciate the network. And I actually want to, EK, I think what you said, I second that wholeheartedly. The idea of having sort of concrete ways to engage both on the research level and on the teaching level, I think are really is a really exciting idea. So, I mean, things like if people want collaboration on a project, if there were a place to go where you could sort of check and post, that kind of thing, funding sources. I mean, we all have sort of, you get lots of things from random places, but if there were more of a clearinghouse for common interests, that would be really great. I did want to emphasize the student perspective as well. I only teach undergrads, and the idea that you guys are compiling a list of possible places to be able to direct them to study language is amazing, because I actually spoke to, we have the Asian Islander and Pacific student organization on New Paltz campus. And I talked to one of the officers the other day, and when I said, you know, I was sort of telling her about the network, and I said, how would you feel about having more access to language and classes in Southeast Asia? And her eyes went, ooh. So she was very excited about that idea, and she thought that any wider possibility of wider offerings in Southeast Asia would be very welcome among our students, because a lot of our students also have very limited resources, and they're not, you know, super wealthy students for the most part. And actually, just as a sort of side anecdote, one of our students is going to be able to study Tibetan this summer on a study abroad program that went virtual. And he would not have been able to do that had it not been virtual. He just doesn't have the means to travel there. Our Asian Studies program does have a small grant, so we were able to help him fund that. So any other opportunities like that, I think would be fantastic for our students. And just continuing with that one student, one thing that she is very concerned with right now is Asian hate. And I know that this is on everybody's mind right now, but our students on campus are really focused on that. And I think that this network would also be a good place to sort of address that, or at least have resources somewhere central. And I know our students would be very much into something like that. So yeah, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Angela Reyes, and I'm really excited to be here. I want to thank all the organizers. A special thanks to Jeng Wang for beautiful organizing work as well. I think I'm the only CUNY representative on this panel, so it's great that we can think about CUNY and SUNY together, and then think across CUNY as well. I really have, in terms of this question, I don't have much to add. I agree with what has been said. I think that just ultimately, I would love to see faculty and students connect. You know, and I would like to know who is out there across CUNY, across SUNY, who are working on Southeast Asia. I mean, just even at Hunter College, which is my home campus, is like Luis Francia is, he was a longtime adjunct. He's not with us anymore, but you know, he and I were really the only ones talking about Southeast Asia. And then, you know, Karen Strassler, who I think is here, is my colleague at CUNY as well, and we're both in the Anthropology program. And we both have students who are working on Southeast Asia. And how wonderful would it be if we could connect our students to faculty, to other students who are working on Southeast Asia. And I have a little bit of experience connecting scholars together. So because I also have a foot in Asian American studies, And so we have been doing this in Asian American studies across CUNY, as well as bringing in SUNY as well. I've worked with like Candace Chu, for example, on New York Asia area, Asian Americanists. Stan Thongaraj and I organized a conference on comparative racialization in Asian American studies. A lot of actually SUNY Stony Brook faculty have been in conversation with as well. So I think it would be really exciting to do something similar with Southeast Asian studies across the CUNY and SUNY system as well. So thank you.
That's a great idea. These are all great ideas. So thank you all for weighing in. So that actually connects really well to the next question, which is about resources. So across the different SUNY and CUNY campuses, what resources are available both for teaching and for research?
I think I'll go first again. So, I think it linked to the next question about the problems. I just try to tie this in together, and people feel free to jump in and add. There's limited resources, and as Lauren mentioned, I mean, my students are pretty much here undergrad. So they're undergraduate students. My home department, geography and planning, very limited resource, and we don't have the graduate program. Besides, it's the graduate program is through the Great Lakes Center, and so that's more of a Master in Science and more for physical geographers. And I myself an economic geographer, and I'm a more hybrid economic business type of thing. So it's not the resources that I'm able to provide to students over the years is through the courses that I teach on Southeast Asia, my Geography of Asia course, and that's offered both online and face-to-face, and now is solely online. But there's, I do spend quite a bit of time, so there's more focus on Southeast Asia, because that's where originally where I came from, Cambodia. And so they get a lot of information. I said I'm biased here, so there's more on Cambodia and the work that I've done there. And then World Regional Geography, which focus there's a section on Southeast Asia, and then that's tied into different regions around the world. And so those are the courses that I teach on a regular basis that provide resources to students who are interested in Southeast Asia and learning more about Southeast Asia. My former colleague, former chair as well, did work in Southeast Asia along with 2 other colleagues on water quality and air pollution. And so we seem to provide this kind of resources to our students on that who are interested in studying about the region. And then through the Southeast Asia Week that I have organized, and thanks to Jennifer for mentioning it, for 10 years now. So this year marked the 10-year anniversary on campus. I don't have a luxury of having graduate students to help. And so there's, the student assistance is pretty much none. I mean, there's some students who volunteer to help out in terms of, just signing in sheets and things, but pretty much most of the work is done by myself. And over the years, I try to get in the speakers and paying out my pocket as honoraria as well, and inviting them to come on campus. So the limited resources and fundings, but overall, just the resources that we're able to provide on campus is just through my own research and my own connections. And I would love to hear it, and this is why I'm so excited to be here. That's this wonderful conference and get to know people, and through this network that we able to identify the experts and resources that are available to students. And I really found yesterday, Meredith's here, so yesterday panel is really helpful, particularly for my students who do not have any resources and they don't have funding, they don't know what to do. And so all the information is really helpful for the undergraduates, and they do have interest in the region, but they just don't have the means to really get there or find people who can help them to move further. So it's excellent point.
Thank you. I wonder if there's some way in the future to, I don't know, did we record the Southeast Asia Week presentations last year, and are they available? That's just something to think about going forward, I guess, considering how virtual everything is these days. But also, it's so good to hear that these recordings from this whole series of meetings, of panels, is going to be available going forward for students. That sounds like a fantastic resource. So what other resources are available for research and for teaching on Southeast Asia across the SUNY and CUNY systems?
I'll jump in because I do feel the same as what Vida was talking about. A lot of resource comes from faculty members. The university doesn't have that kind of resource for, to support the kind of teaching and work that we do. So a lot of it comes from us. So just to be very frank, right, because we don't have a Southeast Asian Studies program on campus at Stony Brook, all these resources that we hope to have are very scarce. Teaching-wise, we can no doubt talk about library collections such as books and especially audiovisual materials. However, the lack of a program that would help shape the acquisition of teaching materials by our library are very sporadic and unfocused. So the scarcity of material resources on campus turns my attention to different kind of resource, which is what Vida was talking about already. Then this resource I still feel very strongly about, and I want to share with the panel today. So dispersed in 3 different humanities and fine arts department, we have at least 5 faculty members. So I'm really fortunate because our fellow panelists were talking about isolation. I do have faculty members, my colleagues who 4 of them at least, who works in fine arts and humanities, whom I can talk to. Even though we're working on different regions, we can still talk about this general idea of what Southeast Asian studies means. In Asian and Asian American studies, my colleague Narisa Balse is a scholar who works on race, gender, and state violence and popular culture in the US and the Philippines. I'm talking a little bit about them, so it's a way for us to all know that they are around, so we can all collaborate if we need to, starting that conversation. And in English, we have Dr. Timothy August, who specializes in critical refugee studies, diasporic Vietnamese literature, world literature, and Asian American studies. Another one of my colleagues in English, Dr. Jeffrey Santana, is a scholar of Asian North American, Asian diasporic and Pacific Islander studies. He's working on environmental studies right now, a very, very interesting project. And also my colleague, Ben Tosick, he's right here. If you look, Ben is in the panel. Ben Tosick is in music, and he's a scholar of sound, media, music in Southeast Asia with an emphasis on Thailand. He works on something really interesting to me, protest music in Thailand. And I myself is a literary and cultural studies scholar who works on Sinophone cultural production and social movements in Singapore, Malaysia, and Taiwan. I do want to propose this idea of rethinking about or reimagining Taiwan as part of Southeast Asia, so we can have a broader kind of conversation and dialogue. So the question of resource is a question of what existing resource we have at Stony Brook is the faculty member. So it's a very strong statement I want to make here for my institution. I do think that our administration needs to think about investing in what we already bring to the table, faculty member scholarship. So I want to share that also with this entire network for colleagues and students to reach out to us if they need support, right? So I'm speaking on behalf of all my colleagues, but I know that they support this kind of idea. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea. And also, I'm all over Taiwan as part of Southeast Asia. I've actually been writing about that for the early and prehistoric period, strangely enough. But that's another story. What other resources are there? I mean, we will have an opportunity in a moment to talk more about the problems that you've encountered in your own institutions in terms of maintaining research and or teaching on Southeast Asia, but let's focus a little bit more now on what resources do exist.
as we're just going in order, I'll go. Ben Tausig, I'm very excited to meet you because one of the things I was going to talk about was music at SUNY New Paltz. I'll just start right there. Actually, this is sort of a growing area. We're developing Southeast Asian music at New Paltz, and in the last year, we have, so I'll just sort of back up. I don't know if anybody knows Burmese music, but Jojo Nying used to be the director of the Burmese National Orchestra, was living in the Hudson Valley, and got basically introduced to Alex Pei, who's in our music department, who has also become more interested in Asian studies and Southeast Asia, and started learning Burmese piano with Jojo. And so they put together a Burmese music ensemble, which as far as we know is the only one in the United States. And they did a big performance on campus. Jojo commissioned a new piece, they commissioned a new piece that he wrote for the ensemble. I made a couple of films with a student, and now a former student, about the ensemble. And we now have all of these instruments at New Paltz, and we want to grow this program. So if anyone's interested, please contact me. We have Lou Harrison's gamelan set. Lou Harrison created a gamelan set specifically to be able to play Western music. There are 3 of these anywhere, and one of them is at New Paltz. We have a full set of Burmese instruments at New Paltz. We also have Susie Ibarra, who's a composer and Filipino-American percussionist who has performed at New Paltz and is also sort of contributing to that. So this is, we got an Asian Cultural Council grant to work on this. I put together a 2-week, it was supposed to be a collaborative online unit on Burmese spirit mediumship connected to this, in collaboration with Gitamet, which is a music institute in Myanmar. It happened right as COVID, and then the coup in Myanmar took off. So it ended up being less collaborative in terms of, we couldn't connect with students over there, we couldn't connect with spirit mediums, but we did put that together. I'm going to work on revamping that. That is actually, I can give you the website. I'm going to edit it to make it more general this summer. I'll put it in the chat box if anyone's interested. So that's there. And this is kind of an ongoing project. And as a part of that, we want to develop an Asian music and culture minor, which I am going to contribute to and make sure there's a lot of Asian, Southeast Asian content to that, but there already is. So that's something that I think is kind of exciting that's going on at New Paltz, that we want to, as far as possible, sort of draw other folks in. Our ensemble has both community members as well as students and faculty members, and so on. So that's a developing strength at New Paltz. Of course, we have the usual funding problems and so on. And we actually lost, Jojo went to Florida because he needed money and couldn't survive on an adjunct salary for one course at New Paltz. So we're hoping to lure him back and to find more grants. One other thing that I thought I would mention, I don't know if people know about the COIL project through SUNY. What is it? Collaborative online international learning. I didn't do that to put together this collaboration with Gitamet in Myanmar, because we were already doing it when I found out about COIL. But that is something that's available to us, and there's a structure available to help form collaborative courses, especially for those of us with undergraduate students. Like, I don't know, Vida, if that would be something that you could do with your students, because we're sort of isolated away from the other kinds of support systems that you might have with a graduate program. I think, and I want to put in one plug, this is a little bit self-serving, for NYCAS, New York Conference on Asian Studies. I've been the treasurer for a long time. NYCAS is a great conference for networking. It's small, it's intimate, and graduate students, undergraduate students, faculty members are all presenting. So it's another kind of just another venue where we can all meet each other. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Lauren.
Okay, so in terms of CUNY, CUNY has East Asian Studies programs at some of their schools, but there is no Southeast Asian Studies at CUNY. But you can find some teaching and research activity in Asian Studies programs and in Asian American Studies programs. So for example, at Hunter, we have the only Asian American Studies program in the CUNY system. We also have an Anapisi grant. Actually, we have two Anapisi grants, which are these large multi-million-dollar grants from the US government to support Asian and Asian American students at Hunter. There's an Asian American Center at Queens. There's an Asian and Asian American Studies program at Brook, and then both City College and Brooklyn College have Asian Studies programs. So in those types of spaces, you can find some research, some teaching in Southeast Asian studies. On a broader level, CUNY has what's called ARI, the Asian American Research Institute. It's this large sort of research center that is not attached to any one CUNY school, but is sort of this free-floating unit. They do a lot of programming, publications, and support for people who work on Southeast Asia or who are of Southeast Asian descent, or Asian descent, or Asian American descent for that matter. So we have that resource. And then, well, this isn't really CUNY related, but we just recently established the Philippine Academic Association, PAA Northeast. And a bunch of us who work on the Philippines or who are Filipino and are academics who are looking for support and research have belonged to that. And that's actually open to everybody. So if, not like you don't have to be attached to CUNY for that. And it was great to hear my fellow panelists talk about all of their fantastic colleagues at Stony Brook. And it just reminded me that Timothy August, Jeffrey Santa Ana, even Shirley Lim, they presented at the conference that we organized, Stan Thangaraj and I organized on Asian and Asian American race, questions of race. And Narissa is someone I'm in conversation with. So there's a really lovely group of scholars at SUNY Stony Brook, especially, and that makes me quite envious of the support and that you probably all have for each other there. So that's sort of the landscape, a general kind of landscape, and maybe others who are here who are at CUNY could kind of fill that in as well. Thank you.
I think Karen had to step away for a minute. I'm not sure if she's back yet, so otherwise I'm sure she'd jump in and add to that. Are there other people who want to add anything about resources that do exist, as opposed to, yes, please, Lauren.
There was one other thing that I thought I should mention. Our business school has an international MBA program, and they have a winter session study abroad program that was put on hold, obviously, because of the pandemic, but they've sent students to Thailand through that. And they're hoping to do that again, maybe as soon as 2022. So that is a resource that's out there for anyone. I think it's for students who are sort of thinking of going into an MBA program, but I assume that anyone who's sort of business oriented could go into that. So that's something that's available as well.
It's encouraging to me to hear that there's room to build on things that exist. I mean, there's certainly plenty of room to build, but there's also some groundwork that's done in different areas that can sometimes make it easier to build on. And I think, sometimes keeping things not country specific and in a broad, I mean, we can talk about this more, but in a broad Asian studies context, sometimes makes room because sometimes Southeast Asian studies people come and go. On the other hand, there are drawbacks to that too, because it tends to be East Asia dominated or East and South Asia dominated. So we can talk about that. Meeker, did you have a question or a comment?
I just thank you, Jenny. I just want to add on because I just saw that one of our very established and important colleague, David Hicks, Dr. Hicks is here. He's a specialist in Indonesian studies. I just want to acknowledge that we have another very important Southeast Asianist at Stony Brook. So that's it. Thank you. Hi, David.
So should we get into the the drawback sides? You know, what are the major problems that you've all encountered in your own institution in terms of, you know, being able to maintain a research agenda or teach classes on Southeast Asia?
Okay, I will go first again. I think we'll go by order. So I mentioned this before about, you know, the problems that we have, at least for on my campus, and I think the other panelists and colleagues here can share that in terms of funding. So limited funding to support any type of activities, any types of programs. So as I said, with my annual Southeast Asia Week that I put the information there for the latest program, for quite many years, I was just doing it without any types of support, just on my own with my own interest in the region, and then just getting some colleagues involved and giving talks, and so each theme, the theme for each year is different depending on what the relevant topics are, and then connecting with the communities, and then the US as a whole. So I just after quite a few years, and then got the college to have support through the Office of Equity and Campus Diversity. That's the President's Council there that I'm fortunate to be on the council. So that's how I got them involved. And so just a little bit of support in providing snacks, you know, for the student for some of the events, but overall, still very limited resources and support available on campus. And then the student supports, I already mentioned about that, about graduate students and not having graduate students because, you know, that's really the bulk of the work goes on the individual faculties. I do have colleagues on campus who have had some experience in Southeast Asia or have done some work related to Asia, but again, not really solid type of, you know, coordination across campus. And I'm going to put in the chat here, since we're talking about this, that I heard that was someone was mentioned, I think it was Christian yesterday, Meredith mentioned about the Buffalo State program on the taking students to Burma, right, to Myanmar. And this is an example that there's activity going on campus and School of Education, but there's a lack of coordination as well in getting, you know, people involved and students. A lot of my students who informed me was like, Professor, you know, I took your course and it was really helpful in going on this trip to Myanmar. So I learned a lot about this, but in terms of the organizers and getting people, you know, to be more coordinated on campus and to say, okay, you know, students who are interested in Southeast Asia and going on this trip, these are the faculty members who have done work in Southeast Asia and who have, you know, so I have to speak frankly about that there needs to be more coordination and even on individual campus. And again, we operate in silos, and might be, you know, some competitions and getting grants and all that, but just in terms of knowledge sharing and informing the students, because as I said, what I'm doing with Southeast Asia Week each year is my primary focus is on the students and on the community, just to provide the knowledge of and enhance their knowledge on the region that is not very well known. And we have the refugees from Burma. So there's quite a significant number of Burmese refugees. And so there's a way of tying the community into the program, into the campus. So that think I'm a little bit all over the place here, but those are the things that the limitation that I've encountered, the problems on my campus with the work that I do. And is that because, I have a spectrum of research activities and I don't have a lot of publication on Southeast Asia. A lot of my work deals with global value chains about manufacturing and a lot dealing with the UK. And so my Southeast Asia work, as I explained from the very beginning, is more the applied side and empirical work on the ground, capacity building and development work. And so the more that I think that's why I'm really excited to be here and to be in this network, that the more that I'm aware of what other people are doing and they're aware of my work and can reach out and, extend collaboration and to help our students across SUNY institutions and CUNY institutions and to put names and faces together for to share, our knowledge and experience and resources to help one another. So I think that pretty much what I like to say. I might think of something else later, but I think that's the more of the coordinations and getting people to be familiar with one another and to be part of the network, and that's very useful. And I just want to add a few things as I remember this. I do have now the publication coming up on Southeast Asia, and so I co-edited a book on ordinary cities with extraordinary geographies. So we focus on ordinary cities around the world. It's going to be published in August, and I contributed a chapter on Cambodia. And so city in Cambodia, Siem Reap in particular. And so that's my contribution on the Southeast Asia side to that. And then I have ongoing work that dealing with micro enterprises of women in poverty reduction in developing world, along with my colleagues in India and South Asia. So we're hoping to get the publication out of that too. So that's another piece of contribution to work on Southeast Asia. So with that, I'll just turn to others. Thank you.
Thank you, Vida. I think, the lack of coordination between even just different parts on a single campus, I think there's a lot of work we can do there. And the refugee population is huge here. So between 2003 and 2019, there was over 56,000 refugees as a sort of subset of immigrants to, the country. There were over 56,000 refugees to New York State. And over a third, or about a third of them, were resettled in the Buffalo and adjacent sort of communities area alone. So it's an amazing proportion of our local population, and hugely important and not sort of completely a new phenomenon. But so there's a lot of work to do there. But there are also other people who come from, there's Rohingya who have been in camps in Thailand and Malaysia who then also come here. There's various routes. I happen to encounter a lot of people through being a court interpreter and interpreting for Indonesian and Malay. So people who wind up speaking Malay as a second or third language come across me sometimes. But there's a very enormous population here, and we could do a lot more with and for them. Connected with the academic things that we're doing, especially now in so many ways. Anyway, so what other shortcomings, difficulties, problems have other people also encountered in doing research and teaching on Southeast Asia at your own institution?
I'll jump in right now. I think for too long, our STEM-focused campus and administration at Stony Brook have neglected the importance of humanities and social science education. So this frequent adoption of budget crisis as an argument to streamline cost offerings, shrink resources, freeze hiring and cut programs has resulted in the perpetual marginalization of smaller departments and programs such as those in area and ethnic studies. I think this is a problem that cuts across the campuses that we're all in. Right? So when our research and teaching become closely linked to that of survival and the urgency to prove our existence beyond servicing students in general education, it is much harder now for us to promote and push for research and teaching of Southeast Asia on a campus that does not have a program in this particular area and also does not want to invest in humanities and social sciences education. But despite this reality, I want to be optimistic, right? I do think that there are still ways for us to creatively employ existing resource. I mentioned about faculty member just now. I think that's extremely important to start thinking about what we have and what we can do, even if the school is not supporting us. So this kind of existing resources, however limited, are still useful to help us design some kind of teaching focus on our campus. For example, in English, Timothy August, Jeffrey Santana, and I, myself, we are working on creating a curriculum focused for our English majors and minors on race, ethnicity, and migration. I think this curriculum focus could be a starting point for us to think creatively on how to include our specializations in Southeast Asian studies in the existing programs, and perhaps over the years broaden its scope to a more interdisciplinary and interdepartmental curriculum structure. So despite the lack of resource as a problem for us, I still think that there are ways that we can creatively create something. So I don't want us to feel like limitation will stop us from doing the work. We can still find ways to do that. And on that note, I'm also thinking about relying on colleagues like you guys from different campuses to somehow share those kind of resources for our students, such as what Meredith was talking about earlier on, online courses, right? So I'll stop there. Thank you. Jenny, your microphone.
Thank you. Sorry. Lauren, would you like to jump in?
Sure. I don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, I think I feel like I'm just going to be a broken record here. Resources, right? So as far as faculty research goes, I don't know what it's like at your schools, but as a tenured faculty member, we get something like $700 a year, which can get you maybe to one conference. In New York, you can get to 1.5. Anything else and you're out of luck. So, you know, finding resources for that kind of stuff is rough. Another plug for NYCAST, it's local. And then in terms of teaching, I think we have some of the similar problems as some of you guys have been talking about. New Paltz has traditionally been very East Asia focused, not necessarily just because it's turned out that way. The people that we have we have a lot of China scholars, a few Japan scholars, we have 2 South Asia and 1 Southeast Asian, but our languages are Chinese and Japanese. And so the whole program sort of gets built around that with other Asia. So Southeast Asia is part of other Asia, which doesn't feel so great when you are part of other Asia, but so there's that. Our course offerings are probably similar, pretty limited. I mean, I teach one course that's about Vietnam, which is obviously all Southeast Asia. I incorporate it into my courses. And then there are a few other courses around campus. I actually surveyed our faculty where they'll include a unit on the Vietnam War or the Age of Discovery in Oceania or migration and Asian Americans and things like that. So it's pretty spotty. And I think most of the impetus for focus on Southeast Asia, I've noticed, comes when we have an influx of Southeast Asian or Asian American students with roots in Southeast Asia. And then they start making us think about why don't we have anything on Southeast Asia? And so I've worked with students over the years to try and do that, but then they graduate and then it just, right, the momentum kind of fizzles out. So again, I think that this network is great. And if that momentum can sort of maintain itself outside of the individual student body at any given time, that would be helpful. Other than that, it's pretty much what everybody else said.
Angela?
Yeah, at Hunter, at CUNY, I'm very familiar with also these sort of broad struggles for survival as humanities, social sciences are really having to fight for the attention of upper administration and for resources and so forth. Asian American studies, especially for us historically, has been constantly under threat. It requires careful vigilance, and I've been involved in those struggles. But like on an individual level, my research in the Philippines has been generously supported by what we have are these PSC CUNY grants that are offered to all CUNY faculty, and so I've been able to access that funding for my research in the Philippines. Also, my school has generously funded my research as well. So on an individual level, I'm able to pursue my research. I haven't taught a course specifically on Southeast Asia. I do teach on race. I teach on Asian American. But I mean, it's through this network that we're building here. If we can form connections between faculty and students, it would be great to think through possibilities of what we could build. Let's teach courses. I'd love to teach a course on the anthropology of Southeast Asia. What if we formed a research project through a cross CUNY SUNY collaborative grant, those kinds of resources. And I think that this network offers that potential and possibility to explore those options. Thanks.
Collaborative grants and teaching sound fantastic. We need to get going on that. Well, I took the liberty of posting a recent article, hearing mention of folks teaching things about, the discovery of Pacific and Southeast Asian places. I cringe because my work it strongly revises that kind of narrative. And so I didn't post my book, but I did post this recent article, at least the beginning of which is readable, and it's about rethinking Southeast Asia's place in world history by looking at a much earlier part of its maritime history, so that people don't have to start teaching about the history of Southeast Asia with, this old model of European discovery. So I just put it in there. It's a bit dry though. Anyway, are there other comments that people want to make about, or suggestions about how to either use the resources we have now, or kind of get past or use the lack of resources to build new projects? Because I think there's a lot to do there, but I'm totally open to suggestions. Well, if not, Anne-Marie Murphy has joined us. She joined us a while ago, and Anne-Marie, if you'd like to come on screen, I know you have a few words that you were thinking of saying. Could you introduce yourself first, please?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Anne-Marie Murphy. I'm a professor at Seton Hall University. I'm a political scientist like Meredith, who I've known for quite a while. But my work focuses on international politics in Southeast Asia. I write a lot on Southeast Asia, US foreign policy. I do a lot of work in Indonesia and Thailand and their foreign policies. And also write on democratization. I wrote a book on transnational security issues in the region. et cetera, et cetera. I am one of the founding partners of the New York Southeast Asian Network. So I apologize, I came in late because I had to teach and I didn't get out till 12:20. Has Meredith or my apologies, Jennifer, anybody, have you guys heard kind of like the whole rationale and how we got started?
It would be great to hear more about that.
Okay, so let me just say that I did my PhD at Columbia, right? But Columbia has no Southeast Asia program at all. So for an aspiring Southeast Asianist, I was very fortunate in that there was a mentor there, somebody who did work on Southeast Asia, but was there in a more paraprofessional capacity. Somebody who'd worked at the Ford Foundation, had been the Asia rep, Jack Bresnan. So I had some mentoring and somebody encouraging me, but there were no classes on Southeast Asia. So I got really lucky that I got an SSRC grant that enabled me to spend a year at Cornell, where I did get great academic training in Southeast Asia. And then I also participated in the Southeast Asia Studies Language Program. So, you know, coming up as an aspiring Southeast Asian scholar, I know some of the challenges of studying at institutions that lack those resources. So I've been at Seton Hall for the last 17 years, and it is not a public university, but there's no Southeast Asian program. I do have Angela, you might know Sherry Cuizon. She's a Filipino anthropologist, and at one point she was in charge of the Asian Studies Association Philippine Council. So I do have a colleague there who works on Southeast Asia, but no support. Lauren, like you, my travel budget is $1,000 a year, so it doesn't get me to conferences or Southeast Asia. So, and Vida, you wrote in the chat that you have a very teaching load, heavy teaching load, so do I. So the whole point is I understand many of the challenges that you face. Now, I'm very fortunate that because Southeast Asia doesn't have an Asian studies expertise or center, I have always kept an affiliation with the Weatherhead East Asian Institute there because they were looking to boost their Southeast Asian studies, and they have resources, right? So I was able for the last 10, 15 years to apply for Columbia money for programming. And what that allowed me to do was to apply for money for speakers, for organizing conferences, and tap into their resources. So Jennifer, you and I actually met one another at Columbia a couple of years ago at that critical studies conference. And what became clear over the years is that there were so many people interested in Southeast Asia. I would meet Margaret Scott at the Asia Society. She would come to some of the events we were doing. NYU had a few things. So there were a lot of interested Southeast Asianists, but there was no center for Southeast Asian studies. And as we began to have discussions, and as the Luce Foundation began about 7, 8 years ago to study the state of Southeast Asian studies, many of you probably know that many of the Title VI National Resource Centers on Southeast Asia, pretty much outside of Cornell and Michigan, Wisconsin, kind of the top 3, are just starving for resources. We all know in academia, support for area studies is going down. Academics are now being hired in their discipline. And so Luce was looking for new ways and innovative ways to think about linking scholars and those interested in Southeast Asia together, right? To form these kind of networks that you folks are all creating there. So 4 of us applied for a grant. We did not really know what we were getting into, but we started the quote unquote New York Southeast Asian Network with Seton Hall, Columbia, and NYU as founding partners. So what that allowed us to do was to create a website, to publish a newsletter, to hire students and a half-time worker to try to keep tabs on everything that's happening in Southeast Asia studies. So if you look at our opportunities section on the New York Southeast Asian Network, NYSEAN.org, you will find every conference we can find, every opportunity for funding we can find for both professors and graduate students. So it's kind of a one-stop shop, right? We're trying to provide a resource. The second thing, so we're trying to centralize resources. The other thing we tried to do, and the first thing we did, was to try to map who was out there. Initially just in the kind of greater New York metropolitan area. And we have, if you look on our website, all of our partners, and trying to link academics together. So with some of the funding in the early years, we also did a lot of in-person programming that I met. You know, I was fortunate to meet Karen, et cetera, et cetera. Meredith has spoken at some of these things. And the whole point was to try to do more programming on Southeast Asia that none of us could do on our own at our home institutions. And we would kind of rotate it around the city. And well before the pandemic, we wanted the programming that we were conducting to have a longer shelf life. So we invested in some good camera equipment. So for the last 3-4 years, everything we've done has been recorded. All of the events are on our website. So, you know, really great talks, discussions, etc., can be found there. What we can help do for you is a couple of things. I know that my colleague Margaret talked about the New York Southeast Asian newsletter. We'd love you to sign up. Every week you get our listing of all of the events that are going on. I'll make a pitch. I have a conference series on how 8 different Southeast Asian countries are looking at the United States and what the prospects for Southeast Asian US relations are. And Kosel Path, who is here, is our discussant for our webinar on Cambodia-US relations. So Vida, that might be something that you're interested in next week. So how can we help with some of the kind of lack of resources things? One of the things that was mentioned was funding. I mean, we do have a little bit of funding for what we call our partners funds. And you will see on our weekly newsletters, well, in the website, kind of calls for partners funds. So if you have a program that you can't get funding for, you know, you can propose it. So a number of years ago, we did one on all of the elections in Southeast Asia. Meredith, you were there, you spoke on the Malaysian elections. And so there is little bits of funding. We're talking $3,000. But if you look at our website, you'll see our colleague from PACE, Amy Friedman, just joined forces with a colleague in Southeast Asia. And they had 25 speakers on the topic of empire in Southeast Asia, going back historically and then up to the present, all virtual. And the virtual nature allows this money to go further. So that is something that is there for you. And again, we're trying to provide those kinds of opportunities. Another thing in terms of programming, one of the things that we have been trying to be fairly entrepreneurial with is sharing speakers. So when people come from Southeast Asia, kind of using all of our contacts to try to get them to places that we couldn't bring them to individually. So a couple of years ago, the prominent Indonesian novelist Lea Chudori, the Lone Tower Foundation wanted to bring her to the United States. So she gave talks at, UC Texas, she gave talks in California, and then we were able to pay her way to New York. And she gave, book talks, one at NYU, at Columbia. And so to the extent that people are interested in that, once we get those individuals here, I mean, obviously you can come to a talk there, but then there's also the opportunity to try to, expose somebody of that caliber, those of you who are interested, to get them to your campus for the benefits of your students, for those kind of in-person things that we can do. In terms of grad student support, again, on the opportunities section, we've got tons of funding. I'm sure you all know that both Yale and Cornell do annual grad study conferences organized by their grad students. So those calls for applications are always on our website, months in advance. And they often have funding for your grad students. So that's an opportunity for your grad students. Ditto with the Southeast Asia program. Some of you may know that some of the national resource centers just formed this group called Graduate Student Education Training in Southeast Asia. Meredith, has this been mentioned? The GETC program?
No, because we're not actually eligible, as I understand it.
We're not eligible to yet, but we're pushing. And the thing is that they didn't want to spend their money to create a newsletter to link the NRC organizations together. So they're actually using the New York Southeast Asian Network. So we're making them have some of their programs that they're doing have to be public, all right? So not the kind of one-on-one individual training, but some of the other lecture series. So just keep your eyes out for that, because that's just another opportunity. And did the Mora talk at all, Meredith?
No, she hasn't been here.
Okay, so,
Anne-Marie, it's Margaret. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there needs to be time for questions. So
I'm so sorry. So I just want to flag that she can, she told me she was going to be very interested in that. And then just the other thing is that once we all know who you are and what you're doing, Lauren, you mentioned Gamelan. Wayne Forrest has been fairly successful in getting money and venues for gamelan performances. So perhaps we can put you together for some of those things. So that's just some of the ideas that I had, and my apologies if I spoke too.
You're fine. It's good to hear all these things, because it percolates and makes people's ideas sort of, sparks ideas and inspiration for people. So I think it's great. I'm so happy to hear also about all the musical stuff going on, because I mean, the protest music is amazing, but also just all the different kinds of music things going on. I should mention that here in Buffalo, over the past few years, there's also a gamelan Nusantara that has started up completely outside of the UB system. There's a person who studied in Java for a number of years, and he's just gotten a new gamelan in and gets gigs. So it's kind of like Seattle that way, like completely separate from the university, but really nice to have around. So welcome to take questions now if anybody has questions, or just have general discussion about any of the things we've talked about or anything new that's come to mind. Please don't be shy. Oh, come on, you guys. Meredith.
Okay, and I just know that the questions were people were shy about asking questions in the prior panels. So I figured this is a good moment for me to intervene while everyone else is thinking of the questions. So I've been taking notes throughout, and I thought it would be maybe helpful to give just a little, like some ideas that these suggestions, which are amazing, have sparked, and also just not a lot of background, but so for those who are wondering, the Public Universities Consortium is brand new. We are starting with this conference. So you haven't missed anything. We haven't tried to exclude anyone. The basic, the genesis was that those partners grants that Anne-Marie mentioned, NYSEAN had some money and I had some students. And so we cooked up this idea and it all had to be done very quickly before the money went away. So so those of you who are speaking here, those of you who are present here, I hope you will be involved as we move forward. We just figured this was the most efficient way to get things started rather than, the money has to be spent by next month. So we couldn't really, and I wanted to pay all the students who've been throwing themselves into organizing this. I wanted to make sure that they could actually be paid. So that's I mean, no insult in, the fact that we haven't been able to do a lot of consulting and brainstorming beforehand. The goal was that would happen now. Okay, so with that said, I love some of these suggestions. So I'm going to throw out some things with in hopes that some of these can perhaps, generate more ideas. So one of the things that we've been struggling with is how best to get information out, like how to put out information about this conference, how to reach, especially undergraduates. They are so difficult to, everyone is swamped with emails and so forth. So would welcome definitely suggestions on, Jen learned how to make a website so that we now have an official website, but it's still, we've determined like having a newsletter at this point is not sustainable. Like no one has time to make a newsletter, and no one has time to read additional newsletters. So we will host we'll send things to NYSEAN for their newsletter, which keeps it all efficient. But other ideas of like what sort of platforms or what sort of ways of communicating would be great to hear. We do still have some funding left, so that things that we can do before the funding expires, we can put students on working on that. In terms of resources for undergraduates, when we started thinking about this, we were actually focused more on, what we missed in our grad student experience of having Centers for Southeast Asian Studies. But yeah, others from CUNY mentioned, okay, like undergrads really need to be a more central part. And I completely agree. And that was, the problems of setting this up before brainstorming. But so a key thing will be trying to figure out how best to get out information, like where to put it and how to circulate it, how to make people aware of it on things like where to find online language courses, where to find funds for those classes, especially if they're outside the system, there's a tuition cost involved and so forth. I love the idea of having ways to present research. And I would think like I have undergrads doing honors theses. One of those is organizing. We'll do an honors thesis on the Philippines, as well as MA and PhD students. So I'm wondering if perhaps we could think about something in conjunction with NYCAS of a workshop with faculty from across SUNY and CUNY, possibly other New York schools. Again, we don't need to be exclusive, with students ideally from across levels. Just because it would be a nice way to encourage undergrads as well to go on, but really to keep it kind of within the state in that sense, just because there's the facility of both transferring credits. If somebody, if you've met a student who is trying to find courses, you may be more willing to let them zoom into a class that's not otherwise online, for instance, but also just because it's easier for students to reach out to faculty who are just nearby. So that might be something to consider, and could also then be organically linked with NYCAS. I love the idea of doing something on the on anti-Asian hate, and I'm wondering if that might be also an initiative that could help to coordinate across Southeast Asian students associations. I was amazed to hear the diversity of those associations, but one of the things we found didn't work as well as we hoped in advertising this conference was that we kind of hoped that, all right, we can have the students, the undergrads who are involved in our planning, we're with UAlbany's Southeast Asian Student Association, coordinate with there isn't really, it seems like a particularly tightly knit network of those organizations. So that might be something, if they can coordinate on, perhaps with NYSEAN support, then that might both help to firm up that some sort of linkage structure, as well as have a really great event. And in terms of how we might want to organize this PUC moving forward, we would love to have like more faculty involved, in part so we all get to know each other more. Ideally, something like one meeting a semester. The problem is if everyone is incredibly busy. So part of my goal in thinking through this is what sustainable to me, and I'm sorry if this makes me sound really lazy, but sustainable means not a lot of meetings and, you know, a limited number of deadlines, just because otherwise it's just not possible. And so that's kind of the goal. But and also things that can be done on a shoestring budget. Like, it's great to know that there are some funds out there, but as we've been hearing, there are not a lot. So things that can be done for a few $100s are fantastic. Things that can be done for free are even better. But there's actually a lot that can be, just because I know for me, like, I'm happy to guest lecture for anybody's class. I've relied on guest lectures, like colleagues, friends for years now. I owe massive debts. So those sorts of things, just knowing who's there, who might be willing and in the same time zone, and who's doing what can be great. Okay. I'd love the idea of like some sort of arts performances that can be done in a hybrid format. So those who are in the local area can go, and those who aren't can watch it online. That's the sort of thing for which I imagine we could coordinate with NYSEAN if there's some support left needed. The faculty-led study abroad issue, I'm jumping across my notes here. I tried for, I think, 2 or 3 years to set up a faculty-led study abroad course for like Singapore and Malaysia, to like focus on things I do. I could not draw enough students. And even though there is supposedly this, you know, that yes, there's a website through which students can look for courses from across the schools, as maybe it was Vida mentioned, that coordination doesn't always work so well as one might hope. I love the idea. So I finally, you know, managed to get one that worked by going to more glamorous places. Sorry for those who, like me, love Malaysia and Singapore, but, you know, Bangkok pulled them in. And so, but it was a hassle. And so if there's a better way to advertise these courses across SUNY CUNY, where the credit transfer is super easy, that would be great. And a lot of times that's not through a study abroad or international programs website, but through faculty who know students who might be interested. And I love the idea that came in the chat of also having 2 of us coordinate on such a course, which would be amazing. I was also thinking that like some of the issues about education. So one thing that came up in yesterday's undergraduate panel was the possibility of having students Zoom in to join classes at other universities and register for an independent study at their home university if there'll be a tuition cost otherwise. Just, you know, coordinate with the professor. Again, it sometimes helps when you know the people who are involved, at least the other faculty member. But also it's possible that if departments are willing to be a little bit flexible, 2 of us could think about, you know, team teaching a course that's registered under a separate number at each of our universities. So students have no problem registering. We have a hybrid format. You know, for us, we don't normally have online courses, but now that's sort of changing. So, so that might be possible if it then counts as a class for both of those involved. So there might be some subterfuge in that, but you know, whatever. And there are some collaborative grants from the SUNY and CUNY systems or from external funders. Another thing that just occurred as I was listening to some of the stuff people were saying about, you know, migrant and refugee populations, we could think about an experiential learning course in which there's a centralized Zoom component where people learn about migration, refugees, whatever else, and then do a localized internship, for instance, with communities in their own local area. One possibility, we have talked about a couple of things for next semester, and I'll stop after this, I promise. One would be a possible workshop on securing visas for research in different countries in Southeast Asia, especially post-COVID. That's gotten increasingly difficult already, but it's now likely to be even harder. Another was my undergrads had proposed a panel of Southeast Asians studying Southeast Asia in the US. So, you know, Ceci Cruz, for instance, came up as, well, she's now in UBC, but Canada as well. But, you know, so people who do research in Southeast Asia, who are from Southeast Asia, about like building a career navigating that context, in part because so many of the undergraduates, at least for us, who are so interested in Southeast Asia, have a Southeast Asian background or some links themselves. So that could be for across areas, but or across levels. We could also think about a semester-long or a year-long speaker series in which different ones of us, you know, present on something with a common theme. and make it sort of a regular event, which again, just helps with the issue is coordination, getting the word out, Zoom fatigue, all of that, which won't go away after this year. But if there's a way to think about, some signature events that we can do that are, again, low stakes, easy to sustain, easy to promote, and that really help us to get to know who else is in the state nearby, and also reach out to our students, that would be great. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. I'm sorry to go on so long, but thanks for these amazing, amazing ideas.
No apologies necessary. That was fantastic. There were so many things. I took notes off of your speaking off your notes. Because there's a lot of possibilities there. This is actually really, really encouraging. I'm tempted to say, okay, who's going to take which thing now? But I wouldn't pressure anybody like that. But definitely want to. I mean, you all are go-getters. So Meredith, these are all great suggestions that have kind of pulled together everybody else's ideas, and I want to give us a sort of what to do, what next steps. So let's talk about that. What kinds of next steps, without trying to do everything at once, what kind of next steps would be sort of feasible and keep us kind of in touch and able to inspire each other without overwhelming, anyone with like too much organizational stress and Zoom fatigue, right? What kinds of next steps could we do? It's totally open-ended. I mean, it doesn't have to stick. We're just brainstorming now. Yes, is that a hand? How do I pronounce your name? Is it Nerve? Can you unmute and tell me? Thanks.
Hi, thank you, Jennifer. Thanks so much to Meredith and all the panelists for the really insightful and inspiring. I'm really inspired to hear. I know there's a lot of limitations in terms of Southeast Asia research and teaching in all of our universities, but it's so interesting and exciting to hear that all of your work and initiatives. Very quickly, like, my name is Nerve. I'm a third-year assistant professor at CUNY. I'm based at the College of Staten Island and at the Graduate Center with the Earth and Environmental Sciences. So it's really wonderful to meet everybody in the panel, but specifically Dr. Angela Reyes and Dr. Vida Vanchan, who is also a geographer. Just like to briefly respond to the what's next, AAG, the American Association of Geographers, will be doing the annual conference in New York City, I think next year. So that's something that perhaps our Southeast Asia community can think about. And AAG is very open to not necessarily specifically geographic. I mean, everything is geographic anyway. So we can like think about, hosting sessions or panel, or if you have a book project coming out, I'll be interested to help organize a book session, meet the author, stuff like that. But I also have a quick question, if I may ask. I know we're moving on to the next steps, but we didn't cover faculty mentorship and tenure, but I was wondering if I may ask a question about that. So as a new faculty, as you already all mentioned, like, being a Southeast Asian migrant worker in the US has layers of challenges as well, and tenure is just one of that. And I was wondering, in your experience, when you went for tenure, to what extent did you solicit external reviews from Southeast Asia region scholarship or scholars and to your discipline? I'm thinking about that just because obviously I need to think about that. So just kind of like learning the ropes of the game in terms of to what extent do I actually navigate that requirement for tenure. I hope that makes sense as a question. Thank you so much.
There's actually a lot of disciplinary variation, but usually it's up to the chair of the department to put together a list of external evaluators. And the person who's coming up for tenure often is discouraged from having any input on that because it can be seen as trying to manipulate the process. At least that was what my understanding was in my lovely department. What do other people think? Yeah, Meredith.
I can speak a little bit as somebody who's gone for tenure, but and also as a department chair, so organizes others' promotion files. So it does just vary, not just by discipline, but also by department. So you will across for anyone, you can strike people. In other words, but what often may happen is that you're able informally to speak with your committee chair or with a department chair, and you may have no say in who they actually pick. And some universities you do. But you can still, they often are looking to know two things. One is who will best know your area, like your research. They want somebody who can comment in detail. And so they may not know the Southeast Asianists, and those may be the people who are best able. So giving some suggestions is helpful. But then it's also that you'll need, the other thing that I assume is across the university, I know for us it's become a huge issue now, is that RSCPAC, the university committee, has gotten just brutal in cracking down on the purported conflicts of interest. So, and for so many of us, we have chapters and edited volumes and things like that. And so it's actually that informal consultation process can be especially helpful in making sure that your committee chair or department chair doesn't solicit a letter from somebody who'll be struck because there was some, random connection, or so that at least they can address that. The chair knows to explain that away if it's really not a conflict. But so I actually think that it's really helpful. So even if it's a question of, I think it Zoom's okay. We've been in Zooms with the world now, but and well, it is recorded, but otherwise no evidence, but no paper trail at least. But even at least to speak with your committee chair, like that's organizing your tenure bid, to make sure that they know some of the people they might ask, because we're all in places without Southeast Asia programs. So without other people in our departments, okay, maybe Stony Brook is different. I'm jealous, but without other people who may know, who knows our work, who are our counterparts. And so it's just, even if it's not a formal thing, push the informal, just because it's actually really helpful for those who are soliciting letters.
I'm going to jump in then second what Meredith had done. It's just so important to have a conversation with someone on the committee unofficially to give them some kind of idea of who to look for. No one knows my work at Stony Brook, even though I have peers who are in Southeast Asian studies, but my work specifically on Sinophone studies is unfamiliar to a lot of people because it's a field that is relatively new. It's a field that was sort of founded in 2007. So two of my senior colleagues had separate conversations with me, asking me to define my field to them, so they can do some kind of search for scholars based on those keywords. And I also informed them what to look for specifically and a couple of names for them to think about. I don't have a say in terms of whether they suggest those scholars or not, but at least they can use those scholars' names to think about their connection with the field that they're in, to look for people who work on my work in the kind of work that I do. For example, my work is very critical on China, so I have to inform my colleagues that they have to avoid finding someone who works on very China-centric kind of sentiment with their work, because they will tear my work apart, right? So those kind of conversation is extremely important. Yeah.
Anything else? Yes, please, Lauren.
I actually just to switch back to Meredith's list there, which I also jotted notes on her notes. This is very layered here. One of the things, we've had this issue with how best to get information out in our own department in anthropology, and trying to get our students feeling like they're part of a community without overwhelming them with information. And so we actually just started developing a commons site, which informs people that something has been posted, but it's not so they get some notification in their email box and you can also set that up as a weekly digest or something. But they know to go there to look for it, but that it also sends out. So something like that might be useful. and not overwhelming, as long as you have the resources and somebody to actually set it up, because it does take some work.
There are 2 points that were raised earlier. Lauren mentioned about AAPI, the struggle right now with racism, especially the need to care for undergraduate students. So that makes me wonder, how can we start a conversation that communicate the importance of studying Southeast Asia to our undergraduate students. AAS, Association of Asian Studies, did a panel specifically about how to do research as an Asian scholar in this particular political climate for graduate students. So Lauren's point really makes me wonder, what can we do for undergraduate students? The other point about Meredith's point about getting information to students, we just found out, sadly, we just found out this semester after we started working on programs for AAPI anti racism and the hate issues, that a lot of our students organizations were doing their own programs. So there's so many overlapping programs that makes us realize the importance of us connecting with them. So to bring them all together to have some kind of shared resource among students too. And they're all very good. It's just a matter of how do we connect them all together to do programs together and do programs separately. And they have a very good network of sharing information. I heard that they don't use Twitter anymore. They are using Instagram. So they do know how to connect with other students. So I think those they are good resource for us. We just need to be able to connect them with us.
Just following right up on that, what I was going to say, and maybe this has already been said, I'm sorry if I missed a little bit, but I think in terms of reaching out to undergrads using social media is crucial. And, not just having a website, but having, a Facebook page, an Instagram presence, getting, those individual societies at the different schools to subscribe and follow. And, that is the most effective way to connect people, that generation particularly.
Well, if I may add, I think everybody said everything already, so that's why I've been silent. So all of the suggestions been wonderful. As we were going through this, I was thinking, oh, I could, reach out to AK, to Lauren and Angela. So there's different things that were going on in my mind. It was like, these are the things that, we could do together. So that's why I'm super, super excited. And I think particularly quite relevant right now at Buff State, we are starting a social justice institute. So I am on the committee, and this is a huge committee campus-wide, and I'm on the subcommittee on infrastructure. And I was thinking, because last year was the year before, and through my affiliation with Cornell, I'm sure many of you are, that I was able to host the Burmese women on campus, and was sponsored by our honors program, which I teach one of the courses for on campus here on that. And I was just the overwhelming response from the community, from the campus, like, this is a wonderful opportunity. And I was thinking, what would have been better than having Angela giving a talk about, right now they're so relevant in terms of Asian hatreds and anti-racism, because we organized, me along with other faculty members in history and social education, political science. We had a panel on Islam after we had the student organize one panel, one talk of a person. Sorry, I don't even remember his name because I was so upset right after he finished talking about Islam. And it was a lot of confusion about religion and a lot of stereotypings and all of these things. And so we together, me and my other colleagues that I mentioned, put together a panel to shed light on the religion, on what it means, and that's really beneficial to the campus community, to the students, to learn about this particular religion. And so right now, with the Asian hatreds and anti-racism, so I'm hoping that, sorry, Angela, putting you on a spot, that it would be really beneficial to our campus. And if you're familiar with Buff State, the changing student body, and we become more diverse, a lot of African American students and students who have been less privileged and come from underserved communities. And so there are a lot of things that are relevant to their lives. And I think this is one of the things that will really stimulate the discussion across campus and will be really knowledgeable to everyone. And it would offer a great insight into what's going on in our society. And because Asians, like say I'm also Asian, and Southeast Asian in particular, tend to be relatively quiet. and there's a lot of things that's going on and need to be vocal about it. And I think that's something that will be extremely helpful.
Thanks, Vida. Vida, you and I, we need to get together locally. Yeah,
it was interesting. Our last, when Jennifer gave a talk, it was pretty much right before COVID when we got together. So before this whole pandemic, that was a year ago.
yeah, it's amazing. That's like the last public thing I did.
Same here.
Yeah. Was that a question? Tim, did you want to say something? I see you're appearing on screen. Welcome.
Oh, hi. Thank you. I exist. Yeah. I was not just a lurker. No, but I was good. So my name is Tim Gorman. I'm at Montclair State in New Jersey. So I'm an interloper from across the river.
We welcome all interlopers. Yeah,
we're New York centric. We're kind of like a branch campus of everyone has PhDs from CUNY and SUNY schools in the faculty. I was going to respond to Vida's point because I did my PhD at Cornell and obviously immersed in Southeast Asian studies there. And now I'm kind of like a standalone Southeast Asianist, which is fine. And I'm a sociologist. And it's interesting too, like navigating a campus where, we're a Hispanic serving institution. We have a very diverse student population, not a huge Southeast Asian population, though there's a strong Filipino contingent in North Jersey that's well represented. But I think one of the challenges is generating interest among students, especially in what we do and what's so interesting about Southeast Asia. But if you have a talk on Southeast Asia, maybe people won't show up. But if you have a talk about, you mentioned, maybe reframing some of our interests or some of our kind of collective interests in the framework of having a panel on climate change with the Southeast Asia focus, or on issues of obviously of social justice, issues of I'm just so struck by the waves of protest and resistance around the world, and the parallels between what's been going on in the US and what's going on in Thailand and Myanmar as well. And so I think how do we think kind of creatively about marketing Southeast Asian studies to a new generation, which maybe doesn't have think in the same ways. I mean, Southeast Asian studies, is a kind of a Cold War paradigm, right? And regional studies has its roots in that as well. And I think what students would probably gravitate is to more issues that are transnational, and have huge relevance in Southeast Asia, but connect to their everyday lives and experiences. And I think thinking outside the box of how do you get students without a connection to the region to get interested and involved, and maybe break down some of those kind of traditional people with Southeast Asian connections study Southeast Asian languages, and try to break that down a little bit so that my Latinx and Black students will get interested in the region, even if there's no kind of heritage connection.
Yeah, I think having appealing titles and hooks and structures for organizing talks, conferences, classes, that's a big one. For me, piracy. I thought I was going to write one piece on piracy, but then I kept on getting pulled back into conferences and workshops and volumes and more things on piracy. So people like piracy, you know, but there's all kinds of topics. I just I think for Southeast Asia, like we always have this issue, two issues at least. One is, I mean, Harry Benda long ago said, if you're a Southeast Asianist, you have to be a generalist or die. Like you can't just work on one country, except maybe if you're at Cornell, or in the Netherlands. But you can't just work on one country. You have to kind of be a generalist. But for us, you know, in the system that we're in, you can't just be a Southeast Asianist. It sounds like what you're saying, Tim. Is that kind of where you are?
Yeah, and I have the disciplinary luxury as a sociologist is that no one expects me to just focus on one. I could be a comparativist. Without, you know, I think geography is the same way where we're allowed to kind of, so I think where I'm kind of going, because there's a very strong kind of Latin American studies presence on my campus and a lot of interest. I've been getting involved in kind of comparative work. So I'm just pitching a grant project that would bring students to Columbia, but I have a colleague in Colombia, and we're kind of interested in kind of comparative studies of rivers, both in Southeast Asia and Colombia, and looking kind of comparative kind of, you know, social and environmental histories of rivers. And so, you know, that's interesting to me. And then maybe that's a possible venue, you know, to get students thinking about, you know, not just rivers in one regional context around the world, but the relationship between rivers and society more broadly.
I think the other problem we have though is that like we're constantly pushed to connect Southeast Asia with other parts of the world in order to justify its existence, you know, to the Indian Ocean world, to China, to, you know, now not European colonialism, post-colonial. I mean, and so there's always these disciplinary formations that generally most of us have to, you know, justify our work in terms of these disciplinary paradigms. But at the same time, we're pulled to sort of like, how do we talk about the region and the work we do in it in relation to what's been done on Southeast Asia. And there's, I think, a kind of ongoing challenge there to negotiate that pull. And yesterday, John Seidel gave a talk, and he was kind of framing this pendulum that swings back and forth between the kind of Smale version of autonomy and authenticity and Southeast Asia centric versus sort of external influences on the region, or looking at external, you know, people coming to the region, what they did there, and this sort of dynamic in Southeast Asian studies that sort of moves back and forth between these two points of the pendulum. But I actually think that's a really false dichotomy that's been, you know, it's been promulgated and reinforced by so many scholars, Vic Lieberman and Oliver Walters. I mean, Oliver Walters had a good way of dealing with it because he would take the idea of localizing things, but things were always coming from outside and they were never sort of going the other way. So then you had people like Kerry Ward and Michael Feener and other people looking at sort of Southeast Asians going other places. So yeah, it's a big negotiating sort of balancing act. But I think, you know, it's important for us as Southeast Asians to also show the importance of the region. And there are a lot of ways to do that. I've said too much already.
Hello.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm on the phone.
Who are you?
So, yeah, I'm sorry for lurking. I'm Maria Ortuaste, a political science professor in California State University, East Bay, so interloper from the other coast.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, so I was just listening to others, and thank you for organizing this. And I was struck by some things that, well, I was in a meeting earlier, and I think to someone, the person who was saying that how to get younger people involved, etc. I think younger people more interested in this. I think there's what do you call this? There's if you want to broaden it, there's this parallel experiences among immigrant cultures, right? And if somebody already talked about this, please let me know and I'll shut up. So, and for example, I have a former student who is Filipino American. I'm Filipino, by the way. Is Filipino American, and went home to become a journalist in the Philippines. And obviously there's these questions of, his parents, why are you doing this? It doesn't pay well. We didn't go to the US just for you to go back, etc. And I think for a lot of students, there's this pressure to be something other than who they think they are, if that makes sense, or a pressure not to look back. So maybe, a discussion with undergrads or even high school students about some of these issues from an immigrant perspective, so that you draw in not only Southeast Asians, but also immigrants from Africa, etc. So that could be also a way, basically listen to the students, listen to what they think they need or what they know or what they think they should know. And then the second point is you're talking about equity, diversity, inclusivity, especially in terms of underserved people. And you all probably know this, that many Southeast Asian students, Southeast Asian students are lumped under the Asians, under Asian students in general, and they're not considered as underserved when actually the graduation rate of many Southeast Asian students is much lower than the rest of Asian students. So maybe there's also ways that you can draw them in by focusing on the underserved aspect and how to help them. So basically, by being interested in their success, we can also make them interested in either giving back or, looking at Southeast Asia in a different way. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you tell us again what your name is?
Maria Ortuoste. Yes, CSU East Bay, ORTUOSTE.
Thank you so much for those comments.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
That's another good idea. Yeah, this point about Southeast Asian students or students of Southeast Asian heritage not often being grouped together with sort of other Asians and measured that way. And then I even found a UB paper, obviously done without any interaction with human beings, that that called Bhutan a Southeast Asian country. It's by someone in our, I think, geography department, or maybe in the School of Social Work here, I'm not sure. I was running across it when I was doing some writing for a possible grant, and I was just like, wait, what? Bhutan's not part of Southeast Asia. I was like, what? So that was really frustrating to see that coming in a supposedly scholarly paper.
Hi, can I say something?
Please, Angela.
Yes. So just I realized we're sort of running out of time, and to think about like what's next, what's ahead, what we do from here. Meredith had all of these really great ideas and gave a lot of suggestions for possible directions and possible initiatives and ways to work together. So and of course others have as well. So I'm wondering, is somebody compiling these ideas? And I'm wondering if one way forward is to then circulate a compilation of sort of the ideas that we had about how to build something. And then maybe then we'll see what the response is, who wants to work together, if subcommittees form, things like that. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to help do that, Meredith. Your list sounds like it was pretty comprehensive.
So I was just in the process of typing something in chat, and then I realized that's silly. I can just speak. But yeah, so what I was thinking was, I do have my list, but I'm sure I've missed things others have said. So what I could do is, for those of you who, this is now where the recruitment comes, who would be interested in really helping to make something out of this and move forward, we could plan ideally for after the semester ends, because I'm utterly swamped, as I'm sure everyone else is too, just a planning meeting. So what if those of you who are interested, here, I'll put my email in the chat. If you could just email me the best way to contact you, and just after what date. Like, you don't have to do major planning, we can do a doodle poll later, but like what date you're done with grading, so that we can plan for after everyone is done with, like, really done with the semester, just better all around. If we, so what I could do is circulate like my notes that others can add to, and I'll type them up a little bit, as you saw, they're not in any sequence, and a doodle poll, and we can figure out a time to just meet and just make a plan, because I think we can have different people working on different aspects of this. In the meantime, the things that we've talked about having, you know, while we still have this bit of NYSEAN funding, is to have, you know, the students compile a bit more information. So if you know of, let's say, courses you or a colleague will be teaching on Southeast Asia, even if they're in person, the whole point is that this is New York State, like some of the students involved will be fairly local, you know, we'll be able to commute. So if you know of courses that are coming up, you know, in the next year, that we can just put in a list and circulate to students who may be looking for another Southeast Asia course, or if you know of language courses, you know, at any of the universities that students can take, we'll figure out better ways to get that information. But just anything that you want, we're trying to come up with basically some databases of information. And I love the suggestions of like how to get that information out. We'll work on that. But at any rate, for now, let me know if you're interested in joining a planning meeting and being roped into a committee. And we'll go from there. But I'll circulate some notes. Everyone can add to those notes, and we can plan.
That sounds like a good next step. Maybe this is the point to Karen, did you want to add something? I wasn't sure if that was a hand. No, okay.
Oh, it's just a thumbs up, I think.
Yeah. Oh.
I was going to ask, do New Jersey and Connecticut public universities, do we get like observer status, like the UN?
Hey,
or...
join us.
Okay.
I mean, the thing is, like, we all have the same problem. Like, we're in
Yeah. schools
with like lots of, I mean, the thing is, I'm assuming this is not just, we have a lot of student interest in Southeast Asia, but there's not really a way to channel that. And for grad students, there aren't a lot of resources. For faculty, it can be a little lonely. So, you know, so long as NYSEAN doesn't mind, I'd rather not be exclusive.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, thank you all. First of all, thank you to the panelists. And first of all, thank you to the organizers, Meredith and your amazing student team, and especially Jen. That was fantastic organizing. You guys pulled it together so quickly, and it sounds like amazingly productively. And thank you for recording this and making it available to people. And then thank you to all the wonderful panelists, to Vida and Ike and Lauren and Angela. I'm so grateful to you all for all your comments. This is going to be a wonderful resource. And then to everybody who's here on screen, not on screen, present, thank you so much. So I look forward to hopefully seeing at least some of you at the planning meeting. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks all.
Bye.